How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. One last day for this infernal, never-ending, interminable election. And then we'll be 1,000 some odd days from 2028. How about them apples? I'm so ready for this to be over. I am ready. I think I speak for all Americans at this point when I say, at this point, I don't care who wins, just let it be over. Let it be over quickly. I hope whoever wins in a landslide, so we know by like 10 p.m. on election night we can all go to bed, happy or sad. I do have to tell you, though, that if your world is going to be shaken by one of these people winning, you need to work on your spiritual life, because life is too short to be whipped into existential frenzy over who the president of the United States is going to be. Now, I want to talk to you about a moment, and I was reading, I got to give credit to John Ellis, because I had heard this from people, and he writes a political email, and I get it. I subscribe so you don't have to, and he points it out. I had talked to several Democrats of prominence, and I've talked to Republicans, and all of them have been telling me that this ad stopped Kamala Harris in her tracks and started the rebound for Donald Trump, and that when you model out when the ad started, you can see a direct correlation to Donald Trump turning his campaign around. We need to set the stage here for this, and I'll credit John Ellis with this part of it. You know, we begin with Joe Biden and his disastrous debate performance, and he's got to bail. He's in free fall in the polling. Donald Trump's rebounding. Democrats are pouncing. Joe Biden's got to go away. They have the Republican convention. It ends on a meandering, undisciplined speech by Donald Trump. And then Kamala Harris comes out and becomes the nominee. She goes through the Democratic convention. She gets a polling bounce. She's ahead in the polling. And she and Donald Trump have a debate, and it is disastrous for Donald Trump. And he begins sliding in the polls. Complete campaign freak out. What are they going to do? And then they release this ad. And this ad halts all of the downward trajectory for Trump. It halts all of the upward trajectory for Harris and begins to drag Harris down and pull Donald Trump back up in the polling. It's been vilified by the media. It has been attacked as demagoguery and hateful, and it's worked. Before I play it, I need to talk about Willie Horton. The Democrats have developed a mythology about Willie Horton. In 1988, Al Gore attacked Michael Dukakis over Willie Horton. Willie Horton was a prisoner in Massachusetts. Willie Horton happened to be a black man serving a life prison sentence, but he was on furlough. In Massachusetts, Massachusetts had an idea of furlough. And while he was serving, he was allowed out for weekends. He failed to return and committed assault, armed robbery, and rape in Maryland, where to this day he's in jail. Al Gore used Willie Horton against Michael Dukakis to show that he was soft on crime. And Al Gore lost the primary. Well, George H.W. Bush resurrected the Lee Atwater attack. Lee Atwater was a famous campaign consultant for George H.W. He was ruthless. And he had a quote. The quote was, "By the time we're finished, they're going to wonder whether Willie Horton is Dukakis' running mate." Well, the Democrats, ever since, the ad was powerful. The ad was powerful. Willie Horton was allowed out of prison on a weekend and raped someone and committed armed robbery in Maryland while he was out of prison on the weekend, thanks to Michael Dukakis' weak on crime policies in Massachusetts. And then Michael Dukakis, on a stage, was asked by Bernard Shaw of CNN, if someone raped your wife or murdered your wife, should they get the death penalty? And he hesitated and said no. It amplified the Willie Horton attack. It showed Michael Dukakis soft on crime, and George H.W. Bush crushed him. To this day, the Democrats claim that Willie Horton was a racist, nasty ad. And George H.W. Bush and Lee Atwater were racists for running the ad because they can't handle the truth. The ad was damning because it showed the Democrats to be weak on crime, and Al Gore himself had used Willie Horton. Now they're going to do that to this ad from Donald Trump. This is the ad. By now, you probably know what ad I'm talking about. This is the ad.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
That's the ad. That is the ad the Democrats hate. That is the ad vilified by the media. In fact, John Ellis in his email points to this, how ABC News characterized it. Millions of dollars from Republican groups and figures are being poured into an anti-transgender ad criticizing policies that support the trans community, despite these issues being among the least important concerns motivating voters headed into the 2024 election. Do you know the name of the ad? Do you know what they called the ad, what the title of the ad is? Every ad has a title. Do you know what this ad was called? Nonsense. Nonsense. That ad saved Donald Trump's free fall and caused him to rebound. If you're a Democrat, it may make you very mad to know that, but this ad had an effect with young black men. It had an effect with moms. And here's the problem for the Democrats. The Democratic Party has gone all in on trans rights. In fact, at the end of the ad, the video shows Kamala Harris with a picture of that guy who stole people's luggage, would dress in dresses and wear bright red lipstick and had a shaved head and would dress up as a dog to have sex with other men. And then also with Rachel Levine, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. It's got an arrow and it says Kamala Harris is for they, them, and shows them. And then the ad pivots to Donald Trump. And it says Trump tax cut benefited the middle working class. And it shows a picture of a Hispanic family, a mother and a father and their smiling child. It says Donald Trump is for you. Kamala Harris is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you. Every major Democratic strategist I've talked to and every major Republican strategist I've talked to says that is the ad that saved Donald Trump. And that's a problem for Democrats because Democrats have gone all in on trans rights. I don't want to offend any of you, but I know I'm going to because you're an easily offended group of people. Transgenderism is weird. It is not normal. It is an affront to science and basic biology. And a whole lot of people, including gay people, concluded with the end of gay marriage, you know what, we've got equality. Let's let everybody alone. And you know what white progressive Democrats did is say, we can't leave people alone. Now we need to allow boys to chop off their biological reproductive organs and girls to chop off their breasts, and we need taxpayer funds for it. And we need you to be convinced that a boy is a girl and a girl is a boy. For the Democrats running against Donald Trump claiming that that the Republicans are weird, this is not only weird, it's offensive. It doesn't just violate basic tenets of religion for Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and Christians. It violates basic science. For a party that claims itself to be pro-science, it is not scientific to say boys can become girls. And when you trot out a bunch of experts that say actually it is, and you find out your PhDs have PhDs in art history and sociology, not in hard sciences. You have hospitals performing surgeries contrary to state law. You know, down in Texas, the Biden administration is prosecuting a whistleblower. Oh, the state law prohibits trans surgeries on minors, and the whistleblower actually documented that it was happening. The Biden administration is prosecuting the whistleblower. Not only are they prosecuting the whistleblower, they tried to use a U.S. attorney who had been disbarred by the state for failure to pay dues to do so. Democrats have a huge problem here because the trans issue is not going away, because the trans agenda is a militant agenda. And it is an agenda that offends black voters and Hispanic voters and Asian voters and working class white voters who do not think, regardless of your own personal picadillos, you know, a lot of these people are like, you know what, if you want to do this, go for it, but I don't want my tax dollars used on it, and certainly not for prisoners. And here comes Kamala Harris, who says that the government itself should fund it. The government itself should pay for the transitions of prisoners. And the Trump campaign used the most prominent black voice on radio, Charlemagne, to ridicule it. And by the way, he's a Harris supporter. And even he is ridiculing this as nonsense.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners, every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
I got to tell you, one of the reasons that I want Trump to win tomorrow is for the Democrats to have to reconcile themselves to this stuff. The major donors of the Democratic Party are progressive wokes, and they used their money to force the Democrats to move left on a host of these issues. And in moving left on these issues, they've moved the media on these issues. And in moving the media on these issues, they've alienated the media and the Democrats from mainstream middle-class voters who are fine, whatever your picadillos are behind the scenes, but don't want it imposed on them and their families. They have radicalized teachers to cover up what's happening in schools, and the best the Democrats can do is deny that it's even happening when it is happening and it's documented, and then you're a bigot for pointing it out. The Democratic Party needs to lose tomorrow to come back to common sense, frankly. If the Democratic Party does not lose tomorrow, it's going to think that this crazy issue is mainstream. If the Democratic Party doesn't lose tomorrow, it's going to think itself losing its mind on these cultural issues is a good thing. It's why, more than anything else, I think Donald Trump needs to win, is because the Democrats have gone nuts, and they and their chorus of the media say it's the Republicans who've lost their mind. It is not the Republicans chopping off the parts of children, claiming that to be normal. It's the Democratic Party doing it, and they can't only admit that they're doing it, but then they call you a bigot when you point out it's actually happening. They've got to lose tomorrow to come back to their common sense. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I'm going to jump back to the phones here. CC has been waiting super patiently. Sorry it's taken me so long to get to you. How are you?
Oh, I am so glad to be on, and I am more than happy to wait.
Great.
I was fine this morning until I heard some news at noon. Two things, and I'll come back to the second one last. I am a ex-wife of a U.S. Army Ranger, mother of a U.S. Army Ranger, And today it was reported on the news, which makes me think it was the October surprise that was suppressed, and now it's a November surprise, that Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, head of the Pentagon failed to get ballots to every military member and their families abroad and even here in the United States on bases, said they didn't have enough. They also failed in educating these military members who write a blank check with their lives made out to the United States of America to serve and fight for the freedoms. This is a federal suppression of voters' rights and suppression of the vote. And I do not know how we did not hear about this before now.
So, and for those of you who just tuning in, so you understand what the situation is if you are a vet, if you're in the military and you contacted your state for an absentee ballot, this doesn't affect you. But there are some military personnel who vote by federal write-in absentee ballot. And federal write-in absentee ballots, you just vote for president and vice president. You don't vote for Senate. You don't vote for Congress. You vote for president and vice president. And a number of members of Congress have gotten complaints from members of the military that the supplies that they're used to having for these federal write-in absentee ballots are not on base. And the Defense Department say, well, you can go online now and get them, but they didn't tell anybody you could go online to get them. And that appears to be the hang-up. So here's the situation. Again, and this is really important. And Cece, I'm glad you brought this issue up because I had it in the show notes on Friday. Forgot to bring it up. If you have requested your absentee ballot from your state and you're in the military active duty, it's already gone. And not only that, you are allowed a week past the election to have your vote count. So if your ballot is postmarked by Election Day and wherever you are stationed abroad, and it shows up a week later, they have to count your ballot. But a lot of voters who are in the military, they use the federal write-in absentee ballots, and they're used to being able to pick them up on post at base, filling them out, and sending them in. And the federal government saying, well, there's an online portal now that you can use. Well, they didn't notify everybody. Yeah, complete screw up, probably willful by the Department of Defense. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier, you can get 3 of them right now. You save $200. You get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. What is the Eden Pure Thunderstorm? It's an air purifier. It gets rid of dust. It gets rid of pollen, but it also eliminates odors. It generates ozone. Ozone has a power where it latches onto and attracts odor ions. So it pulls those odor ions to them. Odors are caused by a charged particle called an ion. Because of the way ozone works, it attracts the odor particle to the ozone, and then it wipes out the ion. The ozone essentially destroys itself and the odor-causing ion at the same time. And because it's ozone, it can go everywhere. It can go into the cracks and crevices that you can't. It can go into the furniture mattress pad that you can't. And it wipes out those odors and does very well. You can get 3 of these for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. You get 3 of them. You save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code ERIC3, ERICK3. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, New York Times technology union members are threatening to strike. Here's what they want. They want a ban on scented products in break rooms. They want unlimited break time. They want accommodations for pet bereavement. And my personal favorite, they want a mandatory trigger warning in company meetings discussing events in the news. There's a Pinochet joke in there somewhere, but I'd get hate mail if I made it. Good Lord, these people are children. Fire them all. Good grief. They're threatening to strike on Election Day so they can't do the election needle maneuver thing for the Times. Just ridiculous. What a bunch of children. Okay. I gotta talk to you about this election. I want to play you this clip. This is from Chuck Todd He was on Meet the Press yesterday, making a point a lot of people have been making lately.
It may also be that you shouldn't nominate an anti-democratic felon. You know, I mean, it may not be about the issues. So it may be about the person who's
This
at
is
the
Jen
top.
Psaki
There's
talking
lots
first.
of ways to look at it.
I'm not going to sit here and say that the Democrats are the paragons of virtue and the defenders of democracy. I think there's plenty of evidence that when you nominate somebody who didn't win any one vote, it's hard to suggest you're the defenders of democracy. But I do think that the Republicans in this cycle have abandoned what they traditionally stood for. And so I think there should be a reckoning inside our party.
Chuck?
Well, look, the fascinating aspect of this is neither party is going to be satisfied. They're not going to accept defeat. The question is, do you accept defeat because you don't like the vote count? Or do you not accept defeat because you don't like how the party did it, right? My greatest fear about this election is if Trump wins, I think it, for a generation, is what they believe this is how you conduct yourself in politics, and that this will cement this for a generation. I fear the transactional nature of him could actually turn the party into a kleptocracy if we're not careful. And one thing about political parties when they lose, they end up trying to emulate the party that wins, not necessarily. And while Democrats have been trying to be the anti-version of this, losing 2 out of 3, there's going to be its own reckoning inside the left that could have some saying, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. You know, whether it's lying or exaggerating, whatever you want to. I do think that is what I think is on the ballot about our politics going forward for another half generation.
You notice the fallout and the logical conclusion for Chuck Todd there is that the Democrats are going to become like the Republicans as opposed to realizing they need to move right, which is actually a big fear of the progressives. But larger issue here, I actually am in the minority on this, but I think I'm right. I think Donald Trump has every incentive to, if he loses, accept the results and move on graciously. Now, I know you're not hearing that from anybody else. And I totally acknowledge that I could be wrong. The past is the best indicator of the future. And given 2020 and how he handled it and claimed it was stolen, I mean, I know if Kamala Harris wins, every Trump supporter is going to say they stole it. A buddy of mine actually sent me another video that is circulating that shows a bunch of voters in Pennsylvania. Their birthdays are less than 9. This actually came up in 2020. It's the same thing. These are voters who are so old that it messes up the computers now, and it makes them look like they're 9 years old as opposed to 89 or 90 years old. This came up in 2020. Republicans are circulating these videos again. They're not true. Even the Republican National Committee is saying they're not true, but they're still being circulated by a bunch of Republicans already trying to cede the ground that the race was stolen. It's actually a terrible sign for the Trump campaign that his supporters are spreading these rumors and these edited videos to show, oh, they stole it. They stole it. They actually, I guess, think he's going to lose tomorrow. Donald Trump has every reason to accept his loss graciously tomorrow because he has a prison sentence waiting for him on the other side of the election. That New York case. The judge in that case has postponed sentencing until after the election. If Donald Trump argues that it was stolen, he's going to go to jail. You and I both know that judge in New York is going to throw him in prison if Donald Trump loses and makes a big deal out of the loss and claims it was stolen. The judge is going to throw him in prison. He's still got Jack Smith waiting for him. Jack Smith is appealing the classified documents case in Florida. Jack Smith is moving forward with the case in Washington, D.C. The Fani Willis case in Georgia is imploding, but Jack Smith's cases are not really imploding, and Jack Smith could potentially get a new judge in Florida that's sympathetic to him. Donald Trump, if he plays it nice, he's already said if he loses, he's never running again. If he loses, he's never running again. He's already said it. That not me, that's Trump. He said it multiple times now on the campaign trail. So if Donald Trump does lose, and I actually think he's going to win, but if he loses, he comes out and he congratulates Kamala Harris on making history and says It is a historic moment. The first woman to be president of the United States. Ha ha, Hillary, you sucker. Kamala Harris could do what you couldn't do. And he departs gracefully. That may neutralize the issue. You'll have reporters say, I can't believe he did it. The judge in New York will look at it and say, I think he probably doesn't need to go to jail now. He's not a menace to society. Kamala Harris can say, okay, it's time to move on. I'm going to pardon Hunter Biden and I'm going to pardon Donald Trump. We're going to shut down the Jack Smith investigations and we're going to move on. We're going to move the country forward. She'd be able to do it. Now, of course, if Donald Trump wins, the Democrats have every incentive to play nice because they're already out there saying if Donald Trump wins, he has an enemies list and he's going to seek revenge. I want to read for you what I wrote this morning. If you haven't seen my morning piece, laid it down why I think that ultimately Trump is going to win the election. I wouldn't be surprised if Harris wins. It is that close. I wouldn't be surprised if Harris wins. But this is what I wrote this morning. On a personal note, I think too many reporters in Washington and New York have become arrogant, condescending, and inside a progressive bubble. They elevate Republican voices who hate Republicans. They do not appreciate the concerns of many ordinary middle-class Americans who actually do think letting minors chop off their breasts or biological reproductive organs is insane. And it is even more insane to let a man with his biological organs still intact hang out in a girl's bathroom. By the way, that stuff's actually happening. They've decided a lot of Americans are just not smart and don't like them, and it shows in their coverage. I think it's nuts that Democrats think it's no big deal to fill the country with illegal aliens and transform some local communities and cultures into islands of third world non-English speakers who overwhelm social services, all while the media says it's not happening and it's bigoted if you complain about it. I think the Democrats have been feckless and weak in how they're letting Ukraine defend itself and have given into their anti-Semitic impulses in dealing with Israel. Because they hate Netanyahu, they forced Israel to pull punches that should have been thrown. I think they've looked and acted weak to China and emboldened our enemies. To the south of us, China, Iran, and Russia are presently working with both the Cubans and the Venezuelans, while our sitting president drools on a beach in Delaware and tells us he's okay. Haiti's collapsed. It's rife for foreign influence. We're doing nothing. I think Democrats wrecked the economy and used members of the press to blame Trump for their own profligate spending. I think members of the press hate Donald Trump so much they went all in helping Kamala Harris. I think Democrats and the media have conspired together to destroy the credibility of the United States Supreme Court, not because its decisions, process, or appearance of impropriety, but because they don't control it. I look at the reactions to NBC News hiring Ronna McDaniel, The Atlantic hiring Kevin Williamson, the collective freak out about the Washington Post choosing not to endorse anyone, and I think these people need to be humbled. There's a story in the New York Times that a prestigious private school in New York is going to allow kids off on Wednesday if they have mental anxiety over the outcome of the election. And I think that people who have psychological pain of losing need to lose to build their character and the weak children they've raised. A country cannot sustain itself and be prosperous when it's held hostage to the whims of neurotic, wealthy, white, progressive women who write big checks to the Democrats. So, yeah, I actually hope Donald Trump wins tomorrow. I don't care for him. You all know I don't care for him. But I care for the other side even less. They are the authoritarians they warned us about, and they don't even realize it. I think we will see a bunch of Democrats flee this country if Donald Trump wins, and that's not a bad thing. We may see the entirety of MSNBC go into exile. Remember when Bill Clinton won in 1993, those of you old enough to remember, for several years thereafter, Rush Limbaugh started his show every day, America Held Hostage, day 1, day 500, day 1,000, whatever. I think you could see MSNBC do that. America Held Hostage, America in Exile, MSNBC in Exile, Rachel Maddow live from Ottawa. It would be hilarious. I actually do think a number of these Democrats have so internalized Donald Trump as an authoritarian, they will pack up and leave. When Mary became Queen of England after the turmoil following the death of Henry VIII, a lot of Protestants fled England. And on her deathbed, racked by cancer, they started coming back. They knew Elizabeth would become queen and the Protestants would be safe, and they started coming back. I think you'll see the same thing, that Donald Trump gets elected. You'll see these Democrats who have so internalized their hatred for Republicans, they pack up and leave. They go into exile. They move to France. They move to Ireland. Ireland is happily anti-Semitic these days. They'll go there. They'll go to Canada. And they'll wait out Trump. They'll see the outcome of the 2028 election. Maybe so many of them will leave that the 2028 election will handily go to the Republicans as well. I don't think so. I think many of the people who say they're going to leave, they're not actually going to. It's just something they say. Kind of wish they would. My prediction for tomorrow, I'll just throw it all out there. I think that Donald Trump is going to win, not nearly as much as I thought he was going to win 2 weeks ago. I think starting last Sunday, Donald Trump has done everything possible to remind people why they threw him out of office the first time. It wasn't stolen. Now, I know if he loses, all of his hardcore supporters will say it was stolen, so they don't actually have to deal with the fact that they nominated the weakest of the Republican contenders because they wanted a do-over against Joe Biden. But I actually think he's going to win. I think he's going to win because of the economy. I think he's going to win because people have to spend $1,100 more today on the same things they were buying just 4 years ago. Their wages have not gone up concurrently. I think he's going to win because people are tired of having illegal immigrants flood into this country. The Democrats deny that it's happening and then call you racist when you give them the data. I think he's going to win because when he was in office, the Middle East wasn't in flames and Europe wasn't at war. I think he's going to win because people are tired of the Biden-Harris administration vacillating when it comes to dictators around the world, and Harris is the Harris of the Biden-Harris administration. And I think he's going to win because people are tired of progressive neuroses guiding and governing this country, from trans issues to convinced that we're all going to die because of climate change and everything else. I think he's going to win because people don't want to be forced into battery-powered vehicles. I think he's going to win. I can be wrong. It's going to be closer than it should. In the last week, Donald Trump has done everything possible to remind American voters why they threw him out. He had Tony Hinchcliffe on stage to amplify all the concerns about racism. He said what he said about Liz Cheney. It was bad enough what he said. The media blew it out of proportion, but it's bad enough. He's alienated women who were amenable to him, even with the pro-life stance. He's just in the last week collapsed. But the early vote has been so big and so good for the GOP, and the GOP tends to win on Election Day, that I actually think he's going to win, and I think a lot of progressives are in a bubble with a lot of the pollsters. And in the process, they can't bring themselves to reconcile the data they're seeing on the ground. And the data points to Donald Trump winning. But you know, if he loses, it was stolen. Saying it was stolen means you never have to say you were sorry you picked the bad candidate. Now, let me tell you about Old Glory Bank, because it is a bank that you should be considering using by conservatives for conservatives, as these trends have started of progressives working to get banks to cancel people they don't like. Old Glory Bank stands apart. You can deposit cash into Old Glory Bank, even though it's an online bank. They got 88,000 retail locations they partnered with around the country, where you can deposit cash in your Old Glory Bank using a QR code on your phone. They've got a great app. They do mortgages. They do car loans. They do other loans. They do CDs. They've got great interest rates. They've got fantastic bank apps. The debit card is fantastic. I've used them before they were an advertiser for more than a year. In fact, I like them so much I'm an investor in the bank. I really do believe in Old Glory Bank. I think you will too. They set themselves apart as a great bank. You can get a custodial account for your kid as well, deposit their cash from lawn care, babysitting, what have you, with no fees, no fee checking, no fee savings. It's oldglorybank.com. You can get an account in less than 8 minutes online. Oldglorybank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Oldglorybank.com. Greetings. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I'm starting to see all the wild card electoral college scenarios. A buddy of mine said, if Seltzer's right and Kamala Harris wins Iowa, we're going to have 269 in the electoral college the way this is playing out. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I gotta tell you, I'm just ready for it to be over. We are in less than 24 hours before polls across America open and people are voting. Republicans tend to win the election day vote. They've done quite well in early voting. Let me just articulate this at the end. And I don't know that I'm right here. I could be completely wrong. This could just all be a thing in my head. Nate Silver and others have been warning about the pollsters are hurting their polls. That is, they're trying to conform their poll to everybody else's poll because they don't want to be out on a limb and say one side's going to win or the other. And I just think there's a bias in the bubble towards Kamala Harris. And I do think when you look at the early voting trends, it's gone well for Donald Trump, even though he's sabotaged himself in the past week. And I just wonder if people just can't rationalize a Trump win. And when you look at the data, though, Joe Biden is uniquely unpopular. 2/3 of the country say we're headed in the wrong direction. The number one issue is the economy. The number two issue, if not wrapped with economy, is inflation. And then the next issue is inflation. And the next issue is crime. And Donald Trump leads on all those issues. A majority of Americans, they don't like him, but they say they had a better life when he was president. I just think all that points towards Trump winning tomorrow. The only issue is the emotional appeal. Kamala Harris intentionally, over the last few weeks, did very few interviews, told very few people where she stood, and a lot of people could say, at least she's no drama. And it's not that I don't like it was the mean tweets, but I didn't like the tweets, but I also didn't like him, and I didn't like the people around him. And here comes Robert Kennedy raising his head up and saying he'd be in charge of health care, and that creeps people out. But it just feels to me like Trump, the momentum has shifted back to Harris, but that Trump's done a good enough job to get elected. But I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. I'll tell you one thing. It's not going to be stolen. And I know you think it's going to be stolen if your side loses. And that's just cheaper than rationalizing that you picked a bad horse to run your campaign on. But I think Trump wins this. We'll find out tomorrow, though. I don't think we'll be waiting weeks to figure it out. I think it'll be tomorrow night.